breaking news, right? Something that you might have thought was also already being done. Parents are going to be given the right to be told if their children want to change gender while they're at school. Huh? The world is full of news at the moment which shouldn't really be news, but it is news because we didn't realise how far in the other direction it had gone. Let's talk to Baroness Claire Fox, Director of the Academy of Ideas, because she will be similarly querulous, as I am, no doubt, that these things are actually not happening already. Claire, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good to be with you.
Yes, I mean, I'm sorry to trivialise these matters, but the idea that British people should be put at the top of council house lists and parents should be told that their children might want to change gender while at school seems to me these are two things which should have already been happening.
Well, that might well be true, but before we get too excited about the fact that parents are now going to be told whether their kids want to change gender, we should also note, in a less headline-grabbing piece of news, that parents can't be able at the moment to withdraw their kids from some of the ludicrous relationship education that's leading them to think that they should be changing their gender in the first place.
Yeah.
Because one parent, Claire Page, actually took it to court when she found out that her child was actually being introduced to an attack on heteronormity. What is it, heteronormity?
Something like that.
Something like that, one of those. And constantly young people are being exposed through sex education, what it's called sex and relationship education lessons, to things which really are shocking in terms of age inappropriateness and so on. So there's been a big campaign to get the government to ensure that parents can A, see the materials their kids are using, and B, maybe potentially withdraw them. And guess what? They can't. They've lost in court. The government have been really slow on it.
Right.
And so one of the ways that these young people decide that, you know, gender non-conforming is the way for them and they're going to identify as a whatever, is because they're introduced to this formally through the curriculum, because the government in 2020 introduced mandatory, i.e. you can't pull your kids out, lessons in relationships, and that has ended up including all this gender nonsense.
Yeah, it is incredible, isn't it, how we've let that kind of whole thing slip by, though, because it seems to have happened by stealth in a way, because you've been talking about it, obviously, and there are other very, you know, intuitive and interesting characters who do talk about it now. But, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, did we know this was actually happening?
Well, I think that the problem has been that they've used this device of suggesting that anyone who dares challenge the orthodoxy in relation to gender ideology, identifying, you know, this whole thing about identity politics, immediately gets closed down as a bigot, as transphobic. And I think we've seen that. Even there's a very funny, I don't know if you've seen the clip, but there's a very funny clip of Rishi Sunak having a kind of joke with some people about Ed Davey not being able to work out whether a woman's got a penis or not, right? And Pink News, the newspaper, has kind of put this out as a shock horror. This shows what a bigot Rishi Sunak is. I mean, as it happens, it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to him, because it shows him to have a bit of your Mike Graham common sense in him, and also to be able to tell a joke, which is a bit of a surprise to us all. But anyway, there we go. Pink News don't get the joke, of course, but they immediately take this as not actually Rishi Sunak making fun of Ed Davey, but saying that it's making fun of trans people, which it isn't. Right. And consequently, they call him a bigot and a transphobe and say it's a shocking revelation. And I think that people in public life have been far too prepared to allow these slurs to silence them, to chill them. And of course, there's a group of activists probably in Whitehall and no doubt in the, you know, in all the political parties who go along with this. But largely, the vast majority know it's something they should challenge, but are frightened to do so. And if you look at the fate of Labour MPs who dare speak out, like the Kent MP, Rosie Duffield, Rosie Duffield, she's actually been bullied by her own colleagues for daring to do so. So people just look the other way, and I'm afraid it's doing a real disservice to children and their parents.
But it is also this kind of offensive first choice, first base scenario, isn't it? Like everything's offensive and they're always looking to be offended by something that you've said which was not intended to be offensive and probably isn't offensive.
No, but also this is a very important issue. Young people are sent to school to be educated with the best that's known and thought, not indoctrinated by the latest ideological fad. Parents you know, they act in loco parentis, teachers, but at the moment, teachers are behaving as though parents are the enemy. And the introduction of what are obviously highly contentious political issues, and it could be on gender, but it could be on critical race theory, it could be a kind of obsession with environmentalism. These things are taught to children as though they are fact. And the other shocking story that's been in the papers over the weekend is the example of a teacher criticising two 14-year-olds who dared to challenge one of their classmates who said that they identified as a cat. They kind of said, no, you don't, you can't be, you're not a cat. But it was all within the context of gender. The teacher then called those pupils despicable, said they should be kicked out of the school, said that it was factually not true that there were only two sexes, denied biological reality, and effectively threatened the young girls. What was amazing, because one of them filmed it secretly, was that they were so brave. You know, it was really heartening to have two young girls being effectively bullied by the teacher, who stood up for themselves and said, no, we're not with this, and this is our opinion. You can't force us to say something we don't believe. That's what's going on in classrooms and in schools, and it really is time that the government stops shilly-shallying around. They've got a kind of consultation on what's being taught in sex and relationship education, and they've delayed it and delayed it. I've raised it in the House of Lords, lots of people have made a fuss about this, and they're sort of somehow saying, well, we're going to ask about it. And I think the Department for Education need to get a grip on this, because parents are really being done a great disservice that their children have been used in some kind of experiment in ideology. And the government are too frightened to deal with it head on.
And they're starting that process as well of teaching children how to be kind of easily offended, how to teach children not to be resilient, how to teach children to kind of turn away from anything that they find a bit difficult. And basically they grow up then to be people who turn away from things that might be a bit difficult, and they're not then welcome in certain places because they don't feel that they can be welcomed.
Because if you tell the young people, if you, as it were, provide the young with a set of excuses, I mean, it's almost like a kind of a defense mechanism where you know, if you're sort of 10 or 11, that all you have to do is to say, I find that offensive, or that's harming my, causing trauma to me. Those words are harmful. But they're being taught that, you know, kids on the playground don't automatically know what the words stress and trauma and anxiety are, but they're all wandering around, you know, 6 and 7-year-olds going, oh, I'm really traumatized. Well, they've got that from adults, haven't they? So we're socializing the young into seeing themselves as victims, who are then given a weapon they can use even against their teachers. So if a teacher tries to reprimand them for something they're doing, they'll say, you know, that's so offensive, you're causing post-traumatic trauma in me, I can't possibly get my homework in. And I'm not being glib about this, because I think that what we're doing is we're allowing young people not to develop the resilience they will need to deal with the problems of everyday life. And we wonder why when they go to university they all demand safe spaces and tell the authorities they need to be protected from harmful speech. But that started much earlier on in their education. And I think the gender ideology is the reason why that's so shocking is because it's highly contentious outside of schools. Yet for many teachers, it's being taught as though it's fact. And then you've got these third-party organisations, because a lot of head teachers will be going, oh, God, we don't know what to teach in gender and, you know, in sexuality classes. What are we going to do? So they bring in these activist groups who go in, provide all the teaching materials, train the teachers, the head teacher looks away, and we now have discovered through this court case with this parent that if you're a third-party provider in a school, you can say, I'm not going to show the parents what we've used as teaching materials because that's confidential, because of our, you know, important protection of our, you know, our workplace, you know, of our, I can't remember what the word is, basically where you say this is confidential because we're a corporate entity. And the thing about that is, it's kind of copyright stuff. The thing about that is that you think, so basically parents are being told that their kids can be exposed to all of this and they'll never know about it. And I think that that really tries to separate children from their parents. Indeed, one of the arguments that's been used about why parents shouldn't be told if their kids decide that they're a different gender, which the idea of which they would have picked up in school in the first instance, where they're basically a tomboy, or they're maybe going through puberty, some young girls sort of don't like their body and a bit self-conscious, and immediately you've got an adult affirming that this might mean that they're a different sex. The reason why then they're saying we shouldn't tell the parents is because the parents are probably bigots, right?
Well, that's what they say, but I mean, who decides and who makes that decision? Stay with us, Claire.
How dare they?
Well, exactly.